Apparently, according to that agency you describe, these Russian soldiers were digging in, putting fortifications and trenches right in what is known as the Red Forest.
Well, I wanted to start this one by saying congratulations, North Carolina, on your national championship. But they lost, so congratulations, Kansas, Rock, Chalk, Jayhawk. Okay, I don't really understand this story at all. I am not sure why CNN is covering it, and okay, maybe it's something to do with sanctity of life in general, because this story is a concern about Russian soldiers, and the Russian soldiers under Putin have attacked Ukraine. I'm not sure why we're supposed to be worried about them. Is this Fox News or CNN? Little confused on that. They've attacked Chernobyl and disturbed the grounds and stirred up radiation. Well, I think it's kind of obvious that they don't have HBO, or else they'd know. All kidding aside, it's a terrible thing, and it's terrible for the Russian soldiers. But again, I'm not sure why our concern is there. And I don't mean to be callous, and I don't mean to be a smartass and act like I don't care. I understand they're human, the soldiers are human, and they're doing their job. But I think we're on the side of Ukrainians, and the Ukrainians are suffering horribly here. So if I got to budget my worry, I'm going to worry about them first.
You remember those disturbing images of tanks heading into Chernobyl in the early start of this conflict, and you had the Russians taking over Chernobyl, effectively having those workers hostage.
To start with, the story talks about the Russian troops taking Chernobyl. Now, first, they went in with armored vehicles, which are extremely heavy and probably shouldn't be driven over ground, over soil that radiation is buried underneath. And then it talks about the Russian soldiers taking the Ukrainian people, workers, whoever was at Chernobyl, hostage. Well, guess what? If you take them hostage, they're not going to tell you how dangerous it is to dig trenches. But it's called the Red Forest, and it's in a zone that I'm sure there are tons of signs saying, do not enter, stay away. And you're actually digging into the ground. You're asking for it. And then the radiation, supposedly, because we don't actually know, according to this story, I mean, the truth really hasn't got out. Russia's not talking about what happens to their soldiers. They haven't even been talking about how many soldiers have been killed. I'm sure they're not going to release any accurate information on radiation poisoning. But according to this story, they started digging into the ground, digging trenches, and then the Russian soldiers started getting sick. And then they started leaving, and Ukraine got Chernobyl back. I think that's what happened.
The mainstream line we heard that day was, well, the Russians of all people know the danger of Ukraine. They certainly wouldn't put soldiers who don't know what they're doing on that attack field, right? They're putting in people who know what they're doing. It's Chernobyl, for God's sake. But now we're hearing young soldiers are driving through a no-go red forest, kicking up radiation, building trenches in it, possibly.
The story talks about Russia wouldn't put young soldiers in Chernobyl that didn't know what they were doing. Well, now that's ridiculous, okay? Since when have leaders cared about young soldiers in any army? In any army. Sure, they may not use them exactly as cannon fodder, but they're also not going to be testing their knowledge of nuclear radiation and half-life of radiation leaks that are in the ground and so on before they send them. No, unfortunately, they're troops, they're ground troops, and they're going to be sent in. And you know what? They keep talking about them being young soldiers. Well, guess what? Unfortunately, all soldiers fighting in wars are young, unless, you know, in the situation of Ukraine. Again, the Ukraine soldiers, there are probably some old soldiers because they're fighting for their country. They're fighting for their freedom. So anybody who can fight is fighting. But the Russian army, like most armies, is made up of young male soldiers. And no, they probably don't know much about radiation or anything else. You know what soldiers learn? Soldiers learn to follow orders. And I'm not saying that as an insult to soldiers. Soldiers, they're many very smart soldiers. I'm not saying that they're ignorant or robots or anything, but soldiers follow orders. And the orders are given by old men who are not on the battlefield, who are certainly not being exposed to this radiation, and probably not too concerned about educating these young fighters about what they're walking into. I mean, that's not going to work. If you teach them how dangerous it is, guess what? They might not go.
They just apparently consider them as cannon fodder, as expendable. Now, this sort of thing undoubtedly has already gotten around among the troops, whose morale is not very good to start with. Then you add this and the Russian leadership total disregard for the safety and welfare of their troops. That does not bode well for their morale.
So now we have James Clapper, the former director of intelligence under Barack Obama, and he brings up the legitimate concern about Russians using missiles and armor around nuclear reactors and nuclear facilities in Ukraine, because that could turn out horribly if they blow something up. But then they start talking about the morale of Russian troops. Why do we care? Who wants high morale amongst the Russian troops? The Russian troops are the bad guys, okay? They're the ones who are illegally occupying the Ukraine. They are the ones who are taking over this country. We're pulling for the Ukrainians. We're pulling for freedom for the Ukrainians. Listen, personally, I still have some mixed feelings having seen how the Africans were being treated in Ukraine, but getting past that to a sovereign nation being attacked, we are pulling for Ukraine on this. Why should we care about the morale of Russian troops? Listen, this isn't some college rivalry, okay? You don't have to beat the enemy at full strength. You have to beat the enemy. You have to get the Russians out of Ukraine. If anything lowers their troop morale and makes the Russian soldiers less willing, less likely to fight, that would be a good thing. Do you understand? That's a good thing. Let's get their morale as low as possible so they just give up. I don't understand this story at all. I am sorry. I am not worried about the morale of Russian troops. I am worried about nuclear fallout, and I would prefer they not fire missiles near nuclear reactors.